Chapter 32:11. When they had just started to develop, the Crimson Moon sect had hoped that they could join them. They had even tried to recruit them. However, they had only wanted to make a name for themselves on Penglai Island. Hence, they had rejected the Crimson Moon sect's recruitment. Although they were no different from drowning dogs now, at least they still had their strength. They could only hope that the Crimson Moon sect would still be willing to accept them. When they found out that the cultivator who had recruited them had come to Penglai Island to participate in the Golden Flame Auction House's auction, they immediately came to Penglai Island to contact him. "Big Brother, do you think Big Brother Xiao Nan will agree to recruit us into the Crimson Moon sect?" Lu Jiangang looked at Gao Hanchun worriedly. He had never been so down and out ever since the Xintian Association was established. This feeling was really uncomfortable. If Xiao Nan was not willing to recruit them, then their future would be terrible. Gao Hanchuan's expression was also a little depressed. He was the most depressed out of everyone who had come this far. His two younger brothers had been killed for no reason and he had not found the murderer until now. That was fine. However, the Xintian Association had also been destroyed. He could not take revenge on Yi Lifei even if he wanted to. He was extremely sullen. "With our cultivation base, it shouldn't be a problem for us to join the Crimson Moon sect," Gao Hanchun said after some thought. Gue Jun's expression was also a little ugly. Compared to their previous high spirits, they no longer had the slightest bit of vigor. On the surface, they were just pretending. They did not want to be mocked by their former opponents. "Back then, Xiao Nan tried to persuade us to join the Crimson Moon sect but we rejected him. Now that we're down and out, if we look for him again, I'm afraid we'll be mocked." Hearing this, Gao Hanchun said in a low voice, "Even if we're mocked, there's nothing we can do. We can only swallow it. Once we've achieved something in the Crimson Moon sect, these mocking voices will gradually disappear." Lu Jiangang nodded. "We've completely failed in the previous incident. However, as long as we start all over again, the three of us brothers will be able to create a new world in the Crimson Moon sect in the future." Thinking of this, the three of them looked better. They had spent the past half a year in anger. Now that they had abandoned the Xintian Association, they felt much more relaxed. Just as Gao Hanchun and the other two were deep in thought, a familiar voice rang out behind them. "Brother Gao, you're here." A burly man appeared behind Gao Hanchun and the other two. "I came here as soon as I heard that you were looking for me. I didn't expect that we would have the chance to meet again." Gao Hanchun and the other two hurriedly turned around. When they saw the warm smile on Xiao Nan's face, the heaviness in their hearts dissipated slightly. "Big Brother Xiao, we're here to look for you," Gue Jun said with a smile. "Haha." Xiao Nan nodded. "No matter what it is, let's sit down and talk. It's not convenient to stand here with so many people coming and going." "Yes, yes, yes." Lu Jiangang nodded quickly. "Let's order some food and drink first, then sit down and talk." Chapter 32:12. "Since this place is full, why don't we go somewhere else to talk?" Xiao Nan said slowly. Although he was asking, the dissatisfaction on his face was very obvious. With his current status, he was already giving Gao Hanchun and the other two a lot of face by being willing to meet them. If they were to ask him to go somewhere else, he would not be willing to do so. Gao Hanchun and the other two were clearly not stupid. Just by looking at Xiao Nan's expression, they understood what he meant. They immediately said, "No need, no need. This place is full. Won't you be dissatisfied if two of us leave?" Gao Hanchun immediately gave Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun a look. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun immediately understood. They scanned the crowd in the hall and realized that most of them were sitting in a group. It was undoubtedly very inconvenient for them to attack. In the end, they found a cultivator drinking alone in a corner. Their eyes immediately lit up. This person was their target. In the next second, the two of them walked up to the cultivator and said, "You should be done drinking, right? We want this seat. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly." This scene was clearly seen by Bailey Hongzhuang and the others on the second floor. A trace of disdain appeared in their hearts. The way Gao Hanchun and the others do things really hasn't changed at all. They are always so unreasonable. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly and the corner of her lips curled into a mocking smile. Thinking back to when Gao Hanchun was bent on finding trouble with them, he was also like this. He did not care about the feelings of others at all. It could be said that he was extremely arrogant. I'm afraid that this kind of behavior has already become ingrained in their bones. They won't be able to change it in a short period of time unless they meet someone who can make them suffer. Di Beichen said coldly. The four of them sighed faintly in their hearts. They only hoped that Gao Hanchun and the other two would meet a cultivator who could make them suffer as soon as possible. This way, they would be able to get rid of this bad habit of theirs. However, if it really came to that, the three of them would probably have to go to hell to repent. Speaking of which, the cultivator who came later seems to be wearing Crimson Moon sex clothes. When Xiren's sharp eyes noticed the symbol on Xiao Nan's clothes and could not help but comment. The three major powers of Penglai Island all had their own unique symbols. When their disciples walked outside, their identities could often be distinguished just by looking at their clothes. Of course, there were quite a number of people who would usually fake their names. However, Penglai Island was now filled with cultivators from all over the place. There were also many cultivators from the three major forces. There shouldn't be anyone who would dare to fake their names here. After being reminded by Xiren, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two immediately noticed this point. Their gazes couldn't help but change a little. I didn't expect them to have some connections with the Crimson Moon sect. From the looks of it, they must have a favor to ask of someone. What happened just now was clearly a deliberate attempt to curry favor with the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect. I wonder what the reason is. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with wisdom. Unfortunately, there were too many people in the restaurant and it was too noisy, so they couldn't hear what Gao Hanchun and the others were talking about. Chapter 32:13. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun stood in front of the cultivator who was drinking alone. Both of their attitudes were extremely fierce. This scene was noticed by many cultivators in the restaurant, but no one paid any attention to it. This kind of thing was to see who was stronger among the cultivators. The weak had no choice but to leave. However, when the cultivator who was drinking alone raised his head, Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun could not help but stop in their tracks with just a glance. A chill quickly rose from the soles of their feet to their backs. It was as if they had been glanced at by the Grim Reaper. Their limbs turned cold and they stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. They only felt that their souls were about to leave their bodies. They had never seen such a terrifying gaze before. It was as if one glance was enough to take their lives. Even though they had been on Penglai Island for many years, they had never seen such a terrifying existence. It was so terrifying that they did not even have the heart to resist. At this moment, the two of them were extremely regretful. They originally thought that the other party was easy to bully. They did not expect the other party to be such a terrifying existence. If he wanted to take their lives, it would be a matter of minutes. Cold sweat kept dripping from their foreheads. They were dumbstruck and did not dare to say a word. They did not even have the courage to take a step forward and leave. After glancing at them, the man retracted his gaze. Looking at the empty pot, he seemed to sigh faintly. Then, he stood up and left the table. The crowd did not feel the gaze that Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun felt. They only thought that this man was really a coward. The other party had only left a sentence and he had already left dejectedly. However, Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun were already sitting weakly on the chairs. The back of their clothes was already soaked. They only felt that they had just walked through the gates of hell. They were so close to being in hell now. After seeing that Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun had successfully driven the cultivator away, Gao Hanchun revealed a satisfied smile on his face. He immediately said to Xiao Nan, "Brother Xiao, please come in." Hearing that, Xiao Nan smiled faintly, "Okay." Bailey Hongzhuang, Shangguan Yingying, and Wen Ziren retracted their gazes after seeing this scene. Although they were very disdainful of Gao Hanchun and the other two, they had to admit that the strength of these three people was indeed not to be underestimated. It was expected that the lone cultivator would be driven away by them. After all, it was extremely difficult to fight against four people with the strength of one person, unless the person was an expert among experts. However, Di Beichen's gaze was still fixed on that cultivator. He had a vague feeling that this cultivator was very special, giving him an inexplicable and strange feeling. But he definitely did not dislike. On the contrary, there was a sense of familiarity, but he was definitely, but. When Di Beichen discovered this, he felt it was very strange. It was just a stranger, how could he have such a strange feeling? There was no time to think about anything else. Di Beichen stretched out his hand and directly asked the waiter to invite the cultivator over. He did not know why he did that, but he had a feeling that it would be wrong if he let the other party leave just like that. Chapter 32:14. The three of them couldn't help but look at each other. What was going on? Based on Di Beichen's personality, he wouldn't sympathize with them after seeing them being chased out by Gao Hanchun and the other two, would he? This wasn't his usual style at all. "Beichen, what are you trying to do?" Wen Ziren couldn't help but ask. This was too abnormal. However, Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two with a complicated expression and gave them an unexpected answer. "I don't know either, don't know." This answer made Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two feel a little helpless. Even the three beasties who were gorging themselves couldn't help but raise their heads and look at Di Beichen in astonishment. They had known Di Beichen for so long, but this was the first time they saw Di Beichen do something so strange. It was completely illogical. Noticing everyone's gaze, Di Beichen knew that his answer wasn't convincing at all. He didn't say anything else. Before he could figure out what kind of feeling this was, no matter how he answered, it wouldn't be convincing at all. Di Yujue was in a very bad mood today. He was scolded by his old man again. At his age, he was probably the only person who would be scolded so badly by his old man. Thinking about how he was usually so impressive outside, he felt that his life was a complete failure when faced with his old man, old lady, and wife who resented him when he returned home. However, not only were his old man, old lady, and wife unwilling to forgive him, even he couldn't forgive himself. He took this opportunity to take a breather and drink some wine to lessen the pain in his heart. However, the more he drank, the clearer his mind became and the more he hated himself. However, just as he was about to leave, a waiter appeared in front of him. "Sir, there's a gentleman in the private room on the second floor who would like to invite you for a small gathering." Hearing this, Di Yujue rejected without any interest. Not interested. However, he still subconsciously raised his head to look at the second floor. At this moment, Di Beichen also happened to lift the curtain and look at Di Yujue. The moment their gazes met, their expressions changed a little. The waiter was about to leave after receiving Di Yujue's answer, but Di Yujue changed his mind the moment he saw Di Beichen. He said, "Wait." The waiter hurriedly looked at Di Yujue and heard him say, "I'll go." When Di Yujue arrived at the private room, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had already returned to the chaos ring. After all, it would be very strange if he saw the three gluttonous contract beasts here the moment he appeared. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't know why Di Beichen did this, they believed that Di Beichen must have his reasons for doing this. They would naturally understand later. After seeing Di Yujue arrive, Di Beichen couldn't help but smile. "Sir, please take a seat." Di Yujue sat down opposite Di Beichen. He looked at Di Baichen in front of him and had a very strange feeling in his heart, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, he also knew very well that he didn't know anyone on Penglai Island and naturally didn't know anyone. Chapter 32:15. However, this disguise technique was pretty good. Di Yujue secretly praised in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation was much higher than the four little guys in front of him, he probably wouldn't have been able to see through their disguise. This kind of disguise was enough to deceive people on Penglai Island. "Little brother, why did you invite me up here for a small gathering?" Di Yujue opened the door and asked. Hearing this, Di Baichen smiled faintly. "I don't have any other intentions. I just feel like we hit it off very well and want to make friends." Until this moment, Di Baichen also didn't understand where this strange feeling in his heart came from. Moreover, he didn't have any other intentions in inviting the other party. He just wanted to get to know him. If other people told Di Yujue this reason, Di Yujue definitely wouldn't believe it. However, when Di Baichen said this reason, Di Yujue chose to believe it. Because, he and Di Baichen had the same feeling. Perhaps, the other party invited him because of this feeling. This was really strange. What a coincidence. "I also feel like we hit it off very well when I saw you, little brother. It seems like we didn't know each other before." Di Yujue smiled. Di Baichen nodded. "I just came to Penglai Island not long ago. As for Penglai Island, it's my first time here. I don't think we've met before." "I see." Di Yujue was even more certain of his own thoughts. "Since it's so rare to meet a friend, we don't need to ask about the past. How about a drink?" Di Yujue, who was originally in an extremely bad mood, didn't know why, but after seeing Di Baichen, his mood improved a lot. Perhaps this was an inexplicable fate. Could it be that he also wanted to make a friend despite the difference in age? This little guy in front of him was only in his 20s. He was much older than this little guy. Even he felt that this kind of strange fate was very interesting. "Okay." Di Baichen picked up his glass and drank with Di Yujue without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stared blankly at the scene before them. The strange feeling in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. It was one thing for Di Baichen to do this for no reason, but why did the other party also have the same feeling as Di Baichen? Could it be that there was such a thing as becoming bosom friends at first sight in this world? Di Baichen and Di Yujue didn't talk about themselves or each other at all. They just chatted happily about the situation in front of them, as if they had known each other for decades. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two knew very well that they had never seen him before. What was going on? The three of them quietly exchanged glances with each other. After which, they shook their heads. They really could not understand the reason behind this. Perhaps, this was really a very strange kind of fate. The most important thing was that they were clearly sitting in the same box now, but Di Baichen and Di Yujue obviously only had eyes for each other and completely ignored the other three. It was really strange. It's really too little to drink with bosom friends. My mood today was extremely bad. After meeting you, little brother, it's a lot better. Huh, this toast is for you. Chapter 32:16. In the process of drinking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also discovered that this Di Yujue was not the coward they thought he was. On the contrary, from Di Yujue's words and actions, they could feel that Di Yujue was definitely not an ordinary person. However, why would such a person like Di Yujue leave just because of Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's threats? This didn't make sense. "Hongzhuang, I feel that this young master seems to be very powerful. I can't see through his cultivation at all." Shangguan Yingying transmitted her voice to Bailey Hongzhuang. As soon as Di Yujue entered the box, she couldn't help but check on Di Yujue's cultivation. In her opinion, since Di Yujue was afraid of Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun, his cultivation couldn't be very strong. It was very likely that he was a cultivator at the 5th level of the Purple Realm like them. Even if he wasn't at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, Shangguan Yingying knew that with a rough sense, she could guess how much stronger he was compared to them. However, after some probing, she found that she couldn't sense Du Jue's cultivation at all. As soon as her aura got close to Du Jue, it would be bounced back by a force. At first, she didn't believe it, but after 2 more tries, she had no choice but to believe it. There was a force lingering around his body. No matter who tried to probe, as soon as they got close to him, they would be bounced back. This proved that his strength was definitely not just a little bit stronger than theirs, but an existence that could completely crush them. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been unable to even get close to him. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. This young master is not an ordinary person. Maybe we were wrong before. He didn't leave because he was afraid of Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun. I'm afraid he just wanted to leave. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun happened to appear and he couldn't be bothered to care about it, so he just left. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more convinced of this possibility. After all, when some cultivators' strength reached a certain level, they really didn't have the interest to care about cultivators who were much weaker than them. As long as they made a move, they could directly kill the other party. To care about this kind of person was just lowering their status. Based on her current observation, this Du Jue was definitely not the kind of guy who relied on his strength to bully the weak. On the contrary, from his performance, this Du Jue was most likely from a powerful force, because this kind was simply not cultivated by ordinary people. Only some of the most powerful forces could cultivate such an existence. Di Bei Chen, this friend of his, was very good. Little brother, I have something to say. Thank you for treating me to drinks. See you again. We'll see you again. After 3 rounds of wine, Du Jue finally stood up. Even though he had drunk a lot of wine, his expression was still the same as usual. There was a hint of drunkenness around his eyes, but his eyes were still clear and bright. Di Beichen also stood up. See you again. See you again. Du Jue smiled faintly. The next time we meet, I'll definitely treat you to drinks. After Du Jue left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's eyes fell on Di Beichen. Beichen, how do you feel? He's a very interesting person. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Hearing this, Xiren was speechless. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you know why you wanted to treat him to drinks. Di Beichen shook his head. I still don't know. Chapter 32:17. Upon hearing Di Beichen's reply, everyone was confused. Most importantly, they could not see any hint of perfunctory attitude from Di Beichen's expression. Clearly, Di Beichen was not trying to hide it from them. He really felt that way. I don't know why, but when I saw this person, I had a very strange feeling. It was like déjà vu, or should I say, a kind of. Di Beichen frowned, as if searching for an adjective in his mind. A sense of familiarity. When Di Beichen mentioned a sense of familiarity, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two could not help but change a little. The astonishment in their hearts grew even more intense. A sense of familiarity? Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows, her face full of astonishment. She then looked at Xiren. When you see a stranger, you feel a sense of familiarity? Xiren spread out his hands and shook his head. I've never felt this feeling before, and I can't understand it. Are you telling the truth? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen, a bright light flashing in her clear eyes. Di Beichen nodded slightly. It's true. When I saw him, I had a strange feeling. It was very unfamiliar, but very comfortable. In the face of the people closest to him, Di Beichen did not have the slightest intention to hide, and directly spoke of his most sincere feelings. In fact, if the other party was not Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, he would not have spoken of this inexplicable feeling at all, because no one would believe him. Beichen, could that person be your relative? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the entire room fell into silence. Whether it was Di Beichen, Wen Ziren or Shengguan Yingying, they all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment, their eyes flashing with disbelief. It can't be, right? Ziren could not help but exclaim. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on Di Beichen. Before you and I went to the Yu clan to see my parents, I had never seen them before. However, when I saw them, I felt an indescribable sense of closeness. Perhaps this is the kinship that is dissolved in the blood. No matter how long they had been apart, no matter if they had never met before, there would always be a special feeling when they really met. Grandfather said that he had been searching for your biological parents all these years, but he was unable to find them. However, Grandfather has never been to this Penglai island. As she gradually sorted out her thoughts, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that everything she said was not impossible. On the contrary, it was very likely. Di Beichen and the other two only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was joking or just making a guess. However, after listening to everything, they gradually felt that it was not impossible. Di Beichen's true identity, they had never understood it, but in fact, each of them had always been concerned about this matter and had never forgotten it. Bailey Hongzhuang had always kept this matter in her heart. Because of her previous energy, she could empathize with Di Beichen. Even if Di Beichen usually said that it did not matter, she believed that no one would be indifferent to their own identity. In the depths of their hearts, they all wanted to know the reason why they were abandoned, and even could not forget it. Chapter 32:18. Bailey Hongzhuang understood her grandfather very well. All these years, Situ Yen had been searching for news about Di Beichen's birth parents while searching for Mu Jin's. She believed that if her grandfather didn't believe that Di Beichen couldn't let go of the knot in his heart, he wouldn't have been searching so hard. Whether it was Di Beichen's appearance or talent, he was first class. Bailey Hongzhuang really couldn't understand the real reason why Di Beichen's parents had abandoned him. Could it be that his parents had the same difficulties as her own parents? If that was the case, then finding Di Beichen's parents was even more important. Perhaps at the same time that they were not aware of it, Di Beichen's parents were in some place suffering a great deal. Di Beichen had already sunk into silence. Regarding his parents, when he first learned from Situ Yen that he had been brought here, he had resented them. He didn't understand why his parents had abandoned him. However, as time gradually passed and there was no news about his parents, he gradually put this matter to the bottom of his heart. After getting to know Bailey Hongzhuang and learning about Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's situation, he began to wonder if his parents had abandoned him due to similar difficulties. If that was really the case, then what kind of situation were his parents in right now? However, no matter if it was his master or him, they had spent a lot of effort in this area, but there was still no news. With their status and influence in the Xingxian continent, it wasn't difficult for them to investigate a matter. Even if this matter could be traced back to more than 20 years ago, it shouldn't be to the extent that there was no news at all. However, from start to finish, Di Beichen didn't obtain any information about his birth. Gradually, he gave up on this hope. Perhaps he was overthinking it. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned it, he suddenly felt that it was possible. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? Di Beichen smiled faintly. You also saw that person just now. At first glance, you can see that his background is not ordinary. If I have a blood relationship with such a person, then why did they abandon me? He had always fantasized that he wasn't really abandoned by his parents, but that they were forced to leave him behind. This kind of result was something he could bear. If she had been deliberately abandoned from the beginning to the end, then what was the point of looking for parents who had no feelings for her? The more Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two thought about it, the more they thought about it. However, when they heard Di Baichen's words, they couldn't help but be stunned. Their expressions then turned ugly. Indeed, if it really had something to do with Di Yujue, they really couldn't think of any reason to abandon Di Baichen. None of the cultivators who came to Penglai Island were simple. Presumably, when they were in the Xingxian continent, they must have been doing very well. How could they have been forced to do so? For a moment, everyone fell into silence. Their initial joy had completely disappeared at this moment. Chapter 32:19. Di Baichen no longer cared about his past. Regardless of whether he had the chance to find out his past in this lifetime, he didn't care too much about it. If it was fated, it would be fated. If it wasn't fated, one shouldn't force it. Compared to other abandoned orphans, he was already extremely lucky. His master had raised him as his own grandson since he was young, and he had a wife who was devoted to him by his side. He didn't have any regrets in his life. Perhaps it was because he had lost some things that he was able to obtain all of this now. Hearing Di Baichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel a little guilty. She had only thought of this point, but she didn't think of the problem Di Baichen was thinking about. At this moment, when she spoke of this matter, it was probably a shock to Di Baichen. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying didn't say anything. In their opinion, it would be best if Di Baichen could find his birth parents. However, if they really abandoned him for no reason, then there was no meaning in reuniting with such parents. In other words, if it were them, they wouldn't be willing to reunite with such parents. Then, perhaps it's an indescribable fate that makes you feel like an old friend at first sight. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. In this world, many bosom friends appear like this. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what to say to comfort Di Baichen. However, even if it was just meeting a bosom friend, it was still a very good thing. After all, the world was so big, there weren't many opportunities to meet such a bosom friend. Di Baichen nodded with a faint smile. His right hand quietly held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. He knew that his wife was thinking of him. These things that he usually didn't notice, Bailey Hongzhuang had probably always been in her heart. However, he himself didn't know why they hit it off so well. Even after drinking, the two of them didn't even reveal their real names. They were just chatting about how they hit it off. Perhaps this was their tacit understanding. After Gao Hanchun and Xiao Nan sat down, Gao Hanchun noticed that Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's expressions were very strange. Their faces were also somewhat pale. Gao Hanchun couldn't help but frown as he asked, "What's wrong with you?" Upon hearing Gao Hanchun's question, Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun immediately wanted to tell Gao Hanchun what had happened. However, after noticing Xiao Nan, they swallowed the words back into their stomachs. Given the current situation, it was really not suitable to talk about what had just happened. However, that gaze was really shocking. Even though the other party had already left, they could not help but feel a lingering fear. Gao Hanchun looked at the strange appearance of these two people and knew that something must have happened. However, now was not the right time to talk about it. Therefore, he no longer asked and covered up this matter. There were still 3 days before the auction began. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three discovered that the closer it was to the auction, the more cultivators entered Penglai Island. In just a few days, the number of people in Penglai Island had increased by a lot compared to when they first arrived. Chapter 32:20. It's getting closer and closer to the start of the auction. Recently, the number of cultivators gathered here is really astonishing. However, Penglai Island has also held many other activities. It's very lively. Shangguan Yingying looked at the lively scene downstairs through the window sill. A faint smile of joy appeared on her face. Putting aside the pressure on them, just looking at this scene made her feel like she had returned to the outside world. Thinking back to the time when she was cultivating, although she felt a lot of pressure, she grew up in Cloud Sword sect. She was not in danger all the time and her heart had always been very calm. However, ever since she came to Penglai Island, she knew the feeling of having her head tied to her belt. If she was not careful, she would lose her life. Her heart was always in a state of nervousness. This feeling was very uncomfortable. She finally understood what Xiren was thinking when he talked to her about training. It was just that she had never been able to experience it before. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and nodded. This time, so many cultivators came to Penglai Island. Almost all the shops have benefited. We can take advantage of this opportunity to hold more activities and earn more spirit stones. Yingying, if you are very interested, you can go down with Xiren. However, you must be careful not to have any conflicts with others. As the number of cultivators increased, the probability of conflicts also increased. Just in the past few days, they had already seen a lot of big fights. Once the conflict here became big, after a big fight, the result was very likely that only one side would be able to survive. This was also extremely cruel. Penglai Island's guards only cleaned up the battlefield after the battle. Their indifferent expressions were also very chilling. It was obvious that they had long been used to this scene and did not take it seriously at all. Shangguan Yingying withdrew her gaze and said, I think it's best if I don't go out. Otherwise, with my bad temper, I might cause some trouble. Many people here rely on their high cultivation to be unreasonable. I'd better wait patiently for the auction to begin. Looking at Shangguan Yingying's well-behaved appearance, Wen Xiren couldn't help but chuckle. I didn't expect my Yingying to be so sensible. It really surprised me. Come on, I've always been self-aware. Shangguan Yingying glared at Xiren and curled her lips. Steward Qin should have arrived at Penglai Island in the next 2 days. Di Beichen suddenly said. Xiren nodded. Speaking of which, the Golden Flame Auction House doesn't even know of our existence. How can they negotiate with us? With the means of the Golden Flame Auction House, since they did such a thing, they must have already investigated our identities clearly. Otherwise, they would not have needed to do this. Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Shangguan Yingying frowned, then why didn't they come to find us when we're already here? I'm afraid it's because they still don't know how much we value the tears of frigid flame. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. Perhaps we will only be able to see their true colors after this auction is over. Chapter 32-21. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying's face couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. If that's the case, then Manager Jin is really cunning. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. This is something that everyone knows. Golden Flame Auction House. Have Di Bei and Di Chen arrived at Penglai Island? Old Emperor looked at the submissive Manager Jin in front of him and asked. Manager Jin bowed slightly and said, they've been here for 2 days. I've been sending people to keep an eye on their movements. They're currently staying in the restaurant, but they rarely go out. Basically, they're staying behind closed doors. Hearing this, Old Emperor nodded. So that's how it is. Manager Qin also came to Penglai Island, but he didn't come with Di Bei and the others. Moreover, after coming, they didn't have any contact with each other. I can't be sure if Manager Qin's transaction target is them. Maybe they just took advantage of this opportunity to participate in the auction. At this moment, Manager Jin couldn't be sure of the true situation of this matter. His tone was also uncertain. That's not necessarily true. Old Emperor's expression was indifferent. Maybe this is Manager Qin's trick. He just wants to use this method to make you think that there is no connection between them. Manager Jin's expression changed slightly. He also thought of this point, but he couldn't judge which possibility it was. Old Emperor, should we go and invite them to talk now? Manager Jean raised his eyes and asked Old Emperor's opinion. Old Emperor waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. It won't be too late to make a decision after this auction ends and see their performance during the auction." He didn't care if Di Bei and the others had a normal transaction with Manager Jean. He also didn't care how big this transaction was. The only thing he wanted to confirm was whether Di Beichen was interested in the Tears of Glacial Flame. As long as he could confirm this point, it was enough. The way to confirm this point was very simple. He just needed to see if they would bid for the Tears of Glacial Flame. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't know that someone was thinking of a way to confirm their identity. They were only thinking about how to obtain the Tears of Glacial Flame. However, even if they knew, they would not give up on their current plan. In the blink of an eye, the day of the auction arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three walked towards the auction house together. The Golden Flame auction house was located in the center of Penglai Island. The geographical environment was excellent. From afar, they could see a huge building. That was the headquarters of the Golden Flame auction house. Bailey Hongzhuang believed that this was the largest auction house she had ever seen. The size of the building was beyond her imagination. However, as one of the four great forces, such a building was befitting of Golden Flame auction house's status. On this street, many cultivators were heading towards the Golden Flame auction house. This was the biggest auction in the world, and it attracted everyone's attention. Regardless of whether they had an invitation letter or not, they were all gathered in front of the auction house. The items being auctioned in this auction were treasures that cultivators needed. Therefore, many cultivators were thinking of ways to enter and participate in the auction. Chapter 32-22. There are quite a lot of cultivators here. Wen Xiren sighed. Fortunately, we have an invitation letter. Otherwise, we can only watch from the sidelines. When they first received the invitation letter from Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu, they did not think much about it. Now, they finally understood the importance of the invitation letter. It was not easy for them to come across the auction of the Tears of Glacial Flame. If they stopped outside the auction house because they did not have an invitation letter, that would be the most unacceptable thing. Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. Back then, we met Gao Hanxia and his brother so that we could obtain this invitation. Therefore, this Tears of Cold Flame is destined to fall into our hands, Shengwan Yingying said with a light smile. Hearing Shengwan Yingying's words, smiles appeared on the faces of the heavy-hearted crowd. Perhaps everything was as Shengwan Yingying had said. That would undoubtedly be for the best. The auction is not far away. Let's enter the auction hall first, Di Beichen said slowly. At this moment, there were many cultivators gathered outside the auction house. However, the number of people in the auction hall was relatively better. Most of the cultivators outside the door did not have an invitation letter, while those in the auction hall had an invitation letter. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three entered the auction hall, they realized that the auction hall was much larger than what they had seen from the outside. The entire hall could accommodate thousands of people. Such a scale was truly amazing. The entire hall was abnormally bright. Every piece of scenery and object was meticulously designed, showing off the atmosphere and background of the Golden Flame auction house. This auction house is really amazing. Just by looking at the layout, I can tell that it's not ordinary. They must have spent a lot of money to build this hall, Xiao He could not help but sigh. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She looked around and said, "It's really not simple. I'm afraid that only an auction house like this can collect so many rare treasures." She had already seen the auction catalog earlier. Almost every treasure on it could move a cultivator's heart. If she could, she would want to take all of these treasures. Her strength would definitely increase greatly. It was a pity that although they were no longer as poor as before, they were definitely not rich. At this moment, every cultivator standing in the hall was probably quite wealthy. Any cultivator who was able to get an invitation letter was someone who was quite wealthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be qualified to get an invitation letter at all. Gao Hanchun had the huge heaven-shaking faction as his backing. His income must be extremely rich, which was why he was able to receive the invitation letter. Hence, the objective of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others was very simple. That was to bid for the map fragments and the tears of frosty flame. As for the rest, they could only look at them to satisfy their cravings. Big brother, look, don't those two guys look familiar? Lu Jianang's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He felt like he had seen these two guys somewhere before. When they heard Lu Jianang's words, Gao Hanchun and Gui Jun could not help but look in the direction that Lu Jiangang was pointing at. Their expressions immediately changed a little. Chapter 32-23. That's right, it's the two of them. Gao Hanchuan's eyes darkened. When he first saw these two guys, he had a feeling of suspicion in his heart. However, after getting confirmation from Yi Lifei, he couldn't say anything more. However, he still had a trace of suspicion in his heart. He didn't expect to meet them here on Penglai Island. I never thought I'd meet them here. Lu Jianang's face sank. Yi Lifei has been poisoned for so long, but he's still alive. I think it's very likely that the two of them cured Yi Lifei. If we had known earlier, we would have stopped the two of them and saved Yi Lifei a huge favor. Their plan had been flawless. As long as Yi Lifei died, they would be able to take root on Emerald Island and expand the heaven-shaking sect's influence. Back then, they had already noticed that Yi Lifei's body was not as good as before. They never thought that they would not receive any news of Yi Lifei's death even after waiting for so long. Now, half a year had passed, and Yi Lifei was still alive and well. Clearly, the poison in his body had been removed. This was what made them the most depressed. If Yi Lifei had died, they would still have some hope of returning to Emerald Island. However, not only was Yi Lifei still alive, but he had also developed the Great Azure Sect. It had completely destroyed their hopes. I never thought that the two of them would be so skilled in medicine. Logically speaking, it's impossible for ordinary doctors to cure Yi Lifei when he was at the end of his life. We were really one step behind. Gui Jun sighed. It was precisely because they had taken a wrong step that they had taken one wrong step after another. In the end, they had fallen to their current situation. It was truly a pity. After Xiao Nan heard the conversation between Gao Hanchun and the others, his eyes suddenly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He could not help but frown. Looking at their clothes, they don't seem to be from the 100 Flowers Gate. Gao Hanchun and the others could not help but look at Xiao Nan when they heard that. They don't look like them. Xiao Nan nodded. There are quite a few disciples from the 100 Flowers sect who have come to the auction this time, but they're all wearing the sect's uniform. The two you speak of aren't wearing it at all, so it doesn't make sense. The expressions of Gao Hanchun and the others could not help but change slightly with that. If they're not from the 100 Flowers sect, then who are they? Hold on. I just happen to know a disciple from the 100 Flowers sect. I'll ask him to confirm it, said Xiao Nan. Thank you, Brother Xiao. Gao Hanchun thanked him. Xiao Nan waved his hand. It's just a small matter. It's nothing. Gao Hanchun and the others could not help but look at each other. And the others were slightly gloomy. If these two aren't disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate, then it means that Yi Lifei was working with them to trick us, Gui Jun said in a deep voice. Lu Jiangang frowned. If these two aren't disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate, then who are they? Why would Yi Lifei help them lie to us? He was completely baffled. He could not connect the dots at all. It did not make sense. Chapter 32-24. I've always felt that the Yi Lifei we know wouldn't be able to come up with such a meticulous plan to frame someone. There must be someone else behind him, but after so long, we still haven't found the existence of that military advisor. Do you think it has something to do with these two people? Gao Hanchun narrowed his eyes. Although the two people in front of him looked very young, from the first time he saw them, he had a feeling in his heart that these two people were not simple. And this feeling had not dissipated until now when he met them again. Listening to Gao Hanchun's words, Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's eyes couldn't help but become more serious. At that time, they were inexplicably tricked and fell into such a miserable situation. Until now, they still hadn't found the culprit, so one could imagine the unhappiness in their hearts. Are these two guys so powerful? Lu Jiangang was a little doubtful. Although they look good, at their age, I'm afraid it's difficult for them to reach this step. What's more, the pill that controls people's hearts really has such an effect. We should be looking for an alchemist. What if they are alchemists? Gao Hanchun raised his eyebrows. If the two people in front of him had these two identities, then all of this could be linked together. Gue Jun frowned slightly, and his eyes flashed with a puzzled light. Big brother, I understand what you mean, but we don't have any grudges with these two people. Why would they treat us like this? Maybe they received benefits from Yi Lifei. Lu Jiangang said. Gue Jun shook his head. No, when they were sent to Yi Lifei obviously didn't know them. What's more, with Yi Lifei's character, it's impossible for him to trust two unfamiliar young people. I don't know about this either. Gao Hanchun's face showed a touch of helplessness, as if everything he had thought of before had been overturned by this point. What was the reason for the other party to treat them like this? If he couldn't think of this point, then all of this couldn't be linked together. Forget it, anyway, as long as I see these two guys, I feel uncomfortable. What bad luck. Lu Jiangang turned his head. As soon as he saw these two guys, he couldn't help but think of the situation of the heaven-shaking faction. So many years of hard work had gone to waste just like that. The blow to them was not an ordinary kind of big. Gue Jun shrugged. Since there are only two of them right now, it won't be too late to make a decision after we confirm whether or not they are disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate. If they aren't disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate, then it means that they are lying to us. We can ask them directly. Gao Hanchun nodded. That's right. These two young people don't have any power to resist us. Back then, they had let these two young people go. This time, they would not let them go. As long as they were tortured, they would definitely tell the truth. Then, they would be able to understand everything. While Gao Hanchun and company were conversing, Xiao Nan had already brought another man over. Through the man's attire, Gao Hanchun and company could tell at a glance that he was a disciple of the 100 Flowers Gate. Chapter 32-25. Xiao Nan introduced with a smile, this is the disciple of the 100 Flowers sect I told you about, LV Dong. I've heard so much about you. Nice to meet you. Only after the introductions did Xiao Nan say to LV Dong, I called you over because I want you to confirm something for me. What is it? LV Dong raised an eyebrow. With our relationship, just tell me. I'll definitely tell you as long as I know. Xiao Nan immediately smiled in satisfaction. Look at the two young people over there. Are they disciples of your 100 Flowers sect? With that, Gao Hanchun, Gue Jun, and Gue Jun all looked at LV Dong. They were just too curious about the result. LV Dong looked in the direction Xiao Nan was pointing at and his gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Afterwards, he shook his head, those two. They shouldn't be disciples of our 100 Flowers sect. I've never seen them before. There are many disciples of the 100 Flowers sect. Although I can't say that I can recognize every single one of them, I've made it a rule that every disciple has to wear the sect's uniform when we go out this time to avoid conflicts between fellow disciples and being laughed at by others. The two of them aren't wearing it at all, so they can't be disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect. LV Dong looked away and looked at Xiao Nan in confusion. What's wrong? Is there a problem with that? We've met them before. They said they were disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect. Does that mean they've been lying to us? Lu Jiangang asked. Gao Hanchun and Gue Jun's expressions changed immediately. They were not disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect at all, which meant they had been lying to them the entire time. Just who were they? Why would they lie to them? Thinking up to there, Gao Hanchun's eyes could not help but become even more sinister. It seemed that the two young people really did have a secret. He had to get to the bottom of it all. He had a vague feeling that everything that had happened on Emerald Island was very likely related to the two of them. However, after hearing Lu Jianang's words, Lu Dong's eyes darkened. Someone actually dares to use the name of our Hundred Flowers Gate to swindle others. Xiao Nan was also surprised. These two youngsters are quite bold. Don't they know the consequences of pretending to be disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate? Let's go and take a look. I want to question them face to face and see how they can continue to pretend. Lu Dong's face was full of arrogance and disdain. He had always been proud of his identity as a disciple of the Hundred Flowers Gate, but these two fellows who came out of nowhere actually lied about their identities. He wanted to see how these two fellows would continue acting in front of him. Gao Hanchun and the others had been thinking about how to teach Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Dong a lesson. When they heard that LV Dong was willing to take the lead, the three of them were overjoyed. Now that their statuses were different from before, they had to be more careful when doing things. However, as a disciple of the Hundred Flowers Gate, LV Dong didn't need to care at all. Alright, let's go take a look. Xiao Nan nodded and said to Gao Hanchun and the others, Brother Gao, let's go expose the two of them and recoup your losses. Chapter 32-26. LV Dong waved his hand. This is something that we disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect should do. I should thank you for reminding me of the existence of such a swindler. If I don't take this opportunity to punish them severely, they'll probably go even further in the future. Even though LV Dong was filled with righteous indignation, he only wanted to show off his ability in front of Xiao Nan. They were just two people pretending to be disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect. Once the real master of the sect appeared, they would definitely piss their pants in fright and kowtow in apology. Master, I'm afraid we're in trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four studied the surroundings of the hall, waiting for the auction to begin. Suddenly, Xiao Hei's voice rang out in their ears. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown when she heard that voice. What is it? Gao Hanchuan's group has discovered us. They're walking towards us right now. They're definitely here to cause trouble, Xiao Hei said. With Xiao Hei's reminder, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four could not help but look in the direction that Xiao Hei was pointing at. Sure enough, Gao Hanchuan's group was walking towards them. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Gao Hanchun. Gao Hanchun did not avoid her gaze. Clearly, he was coming for Bailey Hongzhuang. Looks like we really are in trouble, Bailey Hongzhuang said indifferently. Enemies really are bound to meet on a narrow road. We met last time, but I never thought that we'd meet again in the auction house. We really can't avoid them. Shangguan Yingying's eyebrows revealed a deep displeasure. She was worried about the auction that was about to begin. She did not expect that Gao Hanchun would appear before the auction. It really ruined her mood. Di Beichen studied Gao Hanchuan's group and said, they're stronger than us, and they've come in such a menacing manner as well. It won't be easy to deal with them. If it was in a remote place, it would be fine. However, there were people everywhere in the auction house. Once a conflict broke out, the impact would be huge. Moreover, They originally wanted to participate in the auction in a low-key manner and obtain the Tears of Glacial Flame. If they directly attracted the attention of so many people, it would be impossible for them to keep a low profile later. Since we're already here, there's nothing we can do. We can only take it one step at a time. Xiren sighed. Right now, they had no other choice but to deal with the situation as they saw fit. At this moment, Gao Hanchuan's group of 5 had already arrived in front of Bailey Hongzhuang's group. Gao Hanchun originally thought that only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were together. He did not expect that when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were also with them. It turned out that it was a team of 4 people, not 2. Thinking of this, Gao Hanchun only felt a thought emerge in his mind. Before he could figure out what was going on, the thought had already dissipated, and he couldn't recall it for a while. I never thought that we'd meet again, Doctor from the 100 Flowers Order. Gao Hanchuan's gaze was indifferent and cold. Thinking back to how arrogant Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were in front of them, he wanted to see how these two would answer. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also knew that it was useless for them to pretend not to know each other. She immediately said, "Association Leader Gao, what a coincidence." Chapter 32-27. They were not unfamiliar with this attire. The alchemists from the 100 Flowers sect that Steward Qin had invited had the same symbol on their clothes. Clearly, they represented the 100 Flowers sect. Because of this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not directly answer Gao Hanchuan's question. If she continued to pretend to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect, she would undoubtedly be seen through. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not take the bait, Gao Hanchun got straight to the point. "I just happen to have a doctor from the 100 Flowers sect here. Do you know him?" Lu Jiangang and the others all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang's answer. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank when she heard that. She understood Gao Hanchuan's intentions. It seemed that Gao Hanchun had purposely brought a cultivator from the 100 Flowers sect to cause trouble. "I don't know him," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. With that, LV Dong could not help but step forward. He said sternly, "Just who are you two? How dare you pretend to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect?" LV Dong's voice could be said to be very loud. In a short moment, it had already attracted the attention of everyone present. Everyone had been waiting for the auction to begin. Now that they suddenly heard such a large commotion, they could not help but turn around to pay attention. When LV Dong noticed that he had attracted so many people's gazes, he did not feel embarrassed at all. On the contrary, he seemed extremely proud. As a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect, he had always attracted a lot of attention. At that moment, everyone could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen with disdain. Pretending to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect was one thing, but now that they had been caught by the real deal, it was extremely humiliating. Di Beichen glanced at LV Dong indifferently and said, "Sir, when did we pretend to be disciples of the 100 Flowers sect? You can't just randomly throw dirty water at someone. Firstly, we didn't call ourselves disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate. Secondly, we didn't wear the uniform of the 100 Flowers Gate. Furthermore, we don't seem to have met each other before. For you to suddenly come up and give us such a big name, we really can't accept it." Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. Her gaze towards LV Dong was filled with confusion, as if she was looking at a lunatic. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, LV Dong couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He never thought that these two people would deny it, but under such circumstances, it was really hard to refute them. When Lu Jiangang and the others saw this, they couldn't help but say, "You said you were a disciple of the 100 Flowers Gate in front of us before. Are you going to deny it now? Do you have any evidence?" Di Beichen asked casually. They were clearly here to cause trouble, so they might as well deny it. As a result, there was nothing Gao Hanchun and the others could do. Gao Hanchun could not help but chuckle when he saw Di Baichen like this. I really didn't think the two of you would change faces so quickly. You've really broadened my horizons. Gang Master Gao, we've only met once. I really don't understand why you've come to cause trouble for us. Just say what you want to say. There's no need to go out of your way to accuse us, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Chapter 32-28. LV Dong stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man, but I'm warning you, if you dare to pretend to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers Gate on Penglai Island, you could lose your life at any time. Our 100 Flowers Gate's reputation cannot be slandered by people like you. In the beginning, he only thought that the two of them would quickly admit their mistakes after seeing him. He never thought that the two of them would act shamelessly, so he was a bit stunned. However, he quickly reacted. There were many cultivators in the world who wouldn't give up until they saw the coffin. Most of them wouldn't admit it unless they were caught in the act. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's expressions were complicated. They could only wonder where this idiot had come from. They originally only wanted to participate in this auction in a low-key manner. They never thought that they would attract everyone's attention. It was terrible. What are you trying to do? At this point, Di Baichen no longer played games with them. At the end of the day, even if Gao Hanchun was suspicious of them, it was only suspicion. Since you're not disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate, who are you? Gao Hanchun narrowed his eyes and glared sharply at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man. The two of them had deceived them and colluded with Yi Lifei. No one would believe that they didn't know the inside story. I don't think we need to explain things like this to you, Di Baichen said coldly. At this moment, LV Dong stepped forward. I'm giving you a chance to make up for your mistakes. If you don't tell me everything, don't blame me for being rude. Following LV Dong's words, Gao Hanchuan's group of 5 looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 with unfriendly expressions. Clearly, they were ready to attack at any moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze gradually turned cold. It seemed that today's battle was unavoidable. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind Bailey Hongzhuang. LV Dong, what are you doing here? Lu Dong, who was originally arrogant, quickly restrained his arrogant expression after seeing the person who came. He said respectfully, Master Mo. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but turn her head to look at the person who had arrived. With this glance, her eyes could not help but flash with a trace of surprise because this person was none other than the alchemist she had met in the demon refining tower back then, Mo Xingyu. Mo Xingyu's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and a smile quickly appeared on his face. Young Master D, I didn't expect to see you here. What a coincidence. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, Nice to meet you, Master Mo. Hearing this, Mo Xingyu waved his hand and said, I don't have the right to call myself a master in front of you. You are the real master. As he spoke, Mo Xingyu couldn't help but glance between LV Dong and Bailey Hongzhuang. Not long after he entered the auction house, he noticed that everyone was looking in the same direction. He couldn't help but walk over to take a look. However, from the current situation, it seemed like there was a conflict between LV Dong and Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 32-29. When Lu Dong saw Mo Xingyu, he planned to complain to Mo Xingyu, but after hearing the conversation between Mo Xingyu and Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He couldn't help but rub his eyes, wondering if he was dreaming. Mo Xingyu was a true alchemy master in the 100 Flowers sect. His alchemy skills were extremely powerful, and he had a very high status in the sect. First of all, he was just an ordinary disciple who had joined the 100 Flowers sect not long ago. Furthermore, he was only a doctor and not an alchemist. It could be seen that the difference between him and Mo Xingyu wasn't small. If it wasn't for the chance to talk to Mo Xingyu last time, Mo Xingyu probably wouldn't even know of his existence. However, Mo Xingyu was being so polite to this cultivator who was pretending to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect. He even said that the other party was a true master. Wasn't this a bit too shocking? Young Master D, is there a conflict between the two of you? Mo Xingyu slowly asked. Hearing Mo Xingyu's words, Lu Dong couldn't help but shiver. His expression quickly turned ugly. He really didn't expect that he was just teaching two unknown cultivators a lesson. How did this have anything to do with Mo Xingyu? Bailey Hongzhuang was a discerning person. Naturally, she knew that Mo Xingyu had appeared to help her solve the problem. Although it was a favor, she still accepted it. This young Master Lu that I've never met before has been clamoring for us to do so and so. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly smiled, speaking of which, other than the last time I saw Master Mo, I've never seen a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect. I've always wanted to join the 100 Flowers gate, but from the looks of it, they're not even on the same level. It's really surprising. Bailey Hongzhuang had never had a good impression of Lu Dong, a guy who deliberately bullied others just to let himself be in the limelight. Even if she was now using other people's hands, she had to teach Lu Dong a good lesson. It wasn't that easy to help Gao Hanchun and the others. If he wasn't careful, he could lose his life. It really wasn't worth it. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Xingyu's brows quickly furrowed. He turned to Lu Dong and said, Lu Dong, are you being disrespectful to young Master D? Master Mo, I only heard that young Master D was pretending to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers sect. I'm carrying the responsibility of every disciple to remind him. Lu Dong looked troubled. He didn't want Master Mo to think that he was someone who was looking for trouble outside, so he could only tell him the reason. However, after hearing LV Dong's words, Mo Xingyu was even more speechless. What nonsense are you talking about? With young Master's status, why would he pretend to be a disciple? You to B's twos come up with such a ridiculous reason. Gao and the others were An and the others, they and the to see and the others was, they, and everyone. Never in their wildest dreams would they have expected such an outcome. It was simply too shocking. Lu Dong couldn't help but look at Gao Hanchun and the others. The anger in his eyes couldn't be more obvious. The other party was someone that Master Mo had repeatedly invited. No matter how he thought about it, he knew that there was no need for them to pretend. Chapter 32:30. Noticing LV Dong's gaze, Gao Hanchun and the other two were at a loss for words. They clearly remembered everything that had happened. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had clearly lied about being disciples of the 100 Flowers order in front of them. Furthermore, they could clearly remember their arrogant expressions and mannerisms. Yet, in such a short time, how did the situation completely change? Thinking of LV Dong's hatred towards them, they felt helpless. They never thought that not only would they not be able to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson, they would even offend LV Dong. This was not a good thing for them. If it weren't for the fact that the identity of Master Mo in front of them was very unusual, they would have doubted whether this was a play put together by Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Xingyu in order to trick them. Xiao Nan's expression was extremely ugly. He never thought that things would turn out this way. Although he had only heard about this matter from the beginning to the end from Gao Hanchun and the others, he was still the one who had found LV Dong. Now that LV Dong was in trouble, his friendship with LV Dong would inevitably be affected. It wasn't easy to befriend the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate, and knowing LV Dong had saved him a lot of trouble. He didn't expect this to happen. It was unlikely that he would be able to ask LV Dong for help in the future. This was terrible. Thinking of this, Xiao Nan could not help but blame Gao Hanchun and the other two. He did not know what was wrong with the three of them for them to slander each other. Xiao Nan was not the only one who had such thoughts. Everyone present could not help but change their opinions. Previously, even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had not admitted it, everyone was still very disdainful because they did not believe it at all. As an alchemist of the 100 Flowers Order, Mo Xingyu's status was extremely honorable and his reputation was even greater. Many people present knew him very well. Since these words had come from Mo Xingyu's mouth, there was no need to think to know that there was no problem. With Mo Xingyu's status, there was no need for him to lie for Bailey Hongzhuang. Furthermore, from Mo Xingyu's respectful attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang, this Bailey Hongzhuang was clearly an extraordinary person. Master Mo, I don't know either. LV Dong could not help but ask. He had finally managed to gain a foothold in the 100 Flowers Order. If Mo Xingyu wanted to teach him a lesson, he only needed to go back and say a few words, and he would very likely be kicked out of the 100 Flowers Order. This was not an outcome he could bear. Mo Xingyu's eyes darkened. Since you don't know, then what nonsense are you spouting? As a disciple of the 100 Flowers Gate, your every word and action represents your identity as a member of the 100 Flowers Gate. Don't you know that? Through your actions, how many people will misunderstand that our 100 Flowers Gate is being unreasonable? Every time he heard Mo Xingyu's words, LV Dong's heart sank a little. He knew Mo Xingyu well. Normally, he rarely lectured people, but now, the more severe he was lecturing, the more important Bailey Hongzhuang was to him. Thinking up to here, LV Dong was simply about to die from regret. If he had known earlier, why would he have wanted to be in the limelight? At this moment, not only did he lose all his face, he might even lose his future. This was simply unlucky to the extreme. Chapter 32-31. Originally, they were afraid that they would have to fight, but who would have thought that Mo Xingyu's appearance would solve all the problems? Looking at LV Dong's regretful expression, they were extremely happy. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang coincidentally knowing Mo Xingyu and Mo Xingyu admiring her, this situation wouldn't have happened. I was wrong this time. I won't do it again. LV Dong lowered his head and his voice became softer and softer. Compared to his arrogant appearance before, it was a completely different attitude. If the crowd hadn't seen this change with their own eyes, they would have thought that they were two different people. At this moment, LV Dong only felt that his face was burning. He had never been so embarrassed in such a long time. The more arrogant he acted before, the more thoroughly he lost face now. It was really embarrassing to the extreme. However, Mo Xingyu didn't forgive LV Dong just because of his actions. Instead, he said, the person you wronged is young Master D. If you want to apologize to young Master D. If young Master D forgives you, then this matter is over. If young Master D doesn't forgive you, then be prepared to be punished when you return to the 100 Flowers sect. As Mo Xingyu's voice fell, LV Dong couldn't help but raise his head. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes, and at the same time, his face had become extremely ugly. When he noticed Mo Xingyu's serious expression, LV Dong knew that everything Mo Xingyu said was true. If he couldn't calm Bailey Hongzhuang today, then his days after returning to the 100 Flowers sect would be very difficult. Even if his heart was unwilling, Lu Dong could only apologize to Bailey Hongzhuang at this moment. After all, this was related to his own future. Young Master D, I was blind before. I must have made a mistake and wronged you. I hope you won't hold a grudge against me and forgive me this time. LV Dong bowed deeply to Bailey Hongzhuang. His attitude was extremely sincere. Now that things had reached this point, lowering his head was inevitable. He might as well show it more thoroughly. He had offended someone he shouldn't have, but at least he had a chance to make up for it. At this moment, LV Dong was no longer dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, it was meaningless for the weak to be dissatisfied with the strong. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang did not find trouble with him in the future, he would be thankful. Mo Xingyu's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang as he said, "Young Master D, it's up to you to decide how to deal with this matter." Gao Hanchun and the others felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles after seeing this scene. They had no idea what kind of person Bailey Hongzhuang was. Could it be that they had recognized the wrong person? Back then, those two fellows only looked ordinary. If they really had such status and identity, then there was no need to hide at all. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Master Mo, since this is a misunderstanding, it's fine as long as it's resolved." "LV Dong, did you hear that? Young Master D has forgiven you. You can't make such a mistake again in the future." LV Dong nodded repeatedly. His voice was filled with excitement and he felt his entire body relax. Chapter 32-32. At this point, LV Dong could not help but turn his head to look at Gao Hanchun and the other two. The hatred in his eyes could not be more obvious. If he did not listen to their slanderous words, why would he take the initiative to look for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang? This was an undeserved disaster. Noticing LV Dong's resentful gaze, Gao Hanchun and the others felt their hearts skip a beat. The development of the situation was beyond their expectations. They did not intend to trick LV Dong. However, it was obvious that no matter how they explained to LV Dong, it was useless. LV Dong would not believe them at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head faintly, her eyes moving away from Lu Dong's body. She did not intend to say anything more. "Young Master D, did you come to Penglai Island to participate in the auction?" Seeing that the matter had been settled, Mo Xingyu did not have the mood to pay attention to LV Dong. Instead, he focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled faintly. "The Golden Flame auction this time has such a big impact. We have never been to Penglai Island before. Coincidentally, we had the opportunity to take a look, so we came together." "I see." Mo Xingyu smiled faintly. "I wonder how young Master D has been in the Demon Tower recently. Do you have any plans to leave?" "We are currently in the Demon Tower for the arena competition. This time, we came to the auction to see if there are any treasures that can increase our strength. We will not leave for the time being," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not plan to leave the Demon Tower for the time being, Mo Xingyu was a little disappointed. However, his face was still brimming with a smile. The training in the Demon Tower is not something that can be completed in a short period of time. It will take a lot of time. I hope that young Master D can successfully obtain the Demon Tower's inheritance. When that time comes, you will really amaze the world. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. "Master Mo really thinks too highly of me. Although I have such thoughts, I know that it is not so easy to do. However, it is also good to use this opportunity to increase my cultivation. Young Master D, don't forget to visit our 100 Flowers Island when you have the chance. Contact me in advance when the time comes. As the host, I will definitely accompany you." Of course, of course." Bailey Hongzhuang cupped his hands and smiled. After LV Dong left, Xiao Nan, Gao Hanchun, and the others also retreated a little, standing not far from Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. At this distance, they could clearly hear the conversation between Mo Xingyu and Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the more they heard, the more shocked they were. "Brother Gao, I think you've got the wrong person. How could such a person pretend to be a disciple of the 100 Flowers Gate?" Xiao Nan's eyes were filled with displeasure. He never thought that Gao Hanchun would do such an unreliable thing. Originally, he only wanted to show off his connections. He never thought that he would completely offend LV Dong. When he thought of LV Dong's gloomy face, he did not even have the courage to go over and apologize. Gao Hanchun could naturally hear the displeasure in Xiao Nan's words. He could not help but say, "Big brother Xiao, I know you won't believe me, but this matter has indeed happened before. As for why it has become like this now, I don't know either." Chapter 32-33. Forget it. So what if these two really claim to be disciples of the Hundred Flowers sect? There's no point in saying that now. Xiao Nan waved his hand, clearly not intending to listen to Gao Hanchun and the other two's explanation. "I'll go look for LV Dong first. I hope he'll calm down. This time, he's really in trouble. Brother Xiao, why don't we go and apologize together? This is really beyond our expectations. We're really sorry to LV Dong," Gui Jun could not help but say. However, Xiao Nan shook his head, "He's in a fit of anger now. I'm afraid I won't be in a good mood if I go. If you guys go, I'm afraid he won't be able to hold back his anger. Let's just stay here for now." After Xiao Nan left, Gao Hanchun and the other two looked at each other, their expressions extremely ugly. "I remember that these two guys were the ones we met back then. It's only been half a year since we last met. How did they become so unfathomable?" Gui Jun's face was filled with confusion. He could not figure out where the problem came from. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a great opportunity in the past half a year? I'm not sure. I just don't understand. If these two guys are really so capable, why did they lie to us back then? Aren't they just looking for trouble? Lu Jiangang shook his head. He simply couldn't wrap his head around the events that had just transpired. Gao Hanchuan's gaze gradually deepened. His sharp gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. If his suspicions about Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were not deep enough before, now he increasingly felt that these two were not simple. There must be something he had overlooked. According to Master Mo, this young Master D should be an alchemist. Gao Hanchun suddenly asked. Hearing that, Gui Jun and Lu Jiangang both nodded. That's right. We've never understood who refined the pill that could control people's hearts. There's no such expert on Emerald Island, and Yi Lifei doesn't have the ability to refine such a pill. If this young Master D is a very powerful alchemist master, then all these problems can be connected, right? Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun couldn't help but be stunned when they heard this. This idea was really a little shocking, but it just so happened that everything could be linked together. Big brother, do you mean that the medicinal pills were given to Yi Lifei by these two fellows? Not bad. Gao Hanchuan's gaze gradually sharpened. Although I don't have any evidence, I feel that this matter is most likely true. So, in this way, the reason we've fallen into such a state is the result of these fellows working together with Yi Lifei? Lu Jianang's voice rose slightly, and it was filled with shock and disbelief. Gao Hanchun nodded. Haven't we always wondered why Yi Lifei, who was obviously poisoned and beyond cure, is still alive and well? It seems like he hasn't been affected at all. Ordinary doctors of the Hundred Flowers Gate are unable to treat the illness, but in the hands of young Master D, that may not necessarily be the case. In a short period of time, Gao Hanchun had already connected all these together. All the places that he didn't understand were now all clear. Chapter 32-34. After chatting with Bailey Hongzhuang for a while, Mo Xingyu left as well. He had brought the other disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate with him this time as he still had some matters to attend to. Speaking of which, that LV Dong is really unlucky. Mo Xingyu just happened to be here and he got scolded so badly. Sheng Guanying could not help but chuckle. The feeling of being arrogant and suddenly finding out that he had kicked an iron plate was probably not good. Di Beichen's expression was calm, but his eyes that were as deep as the sea revealed a hint of seriousness. Gao Hanchun and the others have already placed their attention on us. I'm afraid that they will keep an eye on us after the auction ends. It might be troublesome when we leave the Golden Flame auction house later. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. I'm afraid that these guys will be waiting outside the auction house for us to leave. They should be holding a grudge against us for what happened on Emerald Island back then, so they want to take revenge when they see us. From what I can see, they are now in contact with the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect and the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate. From the looks of it, they should be doing quite well. Why are they still so concerned about what happened back then? Ziren raised his eyebrows. Although he had always hoped that Gao Hanchuan's life would get worse and worse, from the current situation, although the heaven-shaking faction had retreated from Emerald Island, it seemed that they were still doing well. He could not help but feel a little disappointed. In my opinion, the situation shouldn't be like that. Di Beichen suddenly said. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's gazes fell on Di Beichen. They did not know what Di Beichen's judgment was. If they are really doing well during this period of time, they shouldn't be begging the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect. When we saw them in the restaurant a few days ago, Gao Hanchun was clearly very respectful to the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect. Logically speaking, although the heaven-shaking faction cannot be compared to the Crimson Moon sect, one is an ordinary disciple of the Crimson Moon sect, and the other is the leader of the heaven-shaking faction. Obviously, the leader of the heaven-shaking faction has a higher status. What if that person wasn't an ordinary disciple of the Crimson Moon sect? If he wasn't, then he wouldn't have stood there silently when Mo Xingyu was talking, Di Beichen replied. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two immediately understood. They had not thought of this possibility before, but now it seemed that Gao Hanchun and the other two were in a very bad situation. Beichen, do you think it's because their heaven-shaking faction can no longer survive, so they came to seek refuge with the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect? Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Di Beichen's eyes flashed as he pondered. It's possible, but I can't be sure. If that's really the case, that would be great. Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. These guys are so despicable. If the Shocking Heavens faction fails, they won't be able to accept this blow. Let's go back and ask someone to find out. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Not long after, the auction was finally about to begin. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three immediately walked towards the entrance of the auction hall. At the same time, Di Beichen and Wen Ziren took out their invitation letters. Chapter 32-35. As Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 lined up, Gao Hanchuan's group of 3 followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang's group. Gao Hanchuan's group did not avoid the gazes of Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. Clearly, they already hated Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. Now, they had nothing to lose. In any case, they were not worried that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 could do anything to them. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 did not say anything about this. They just pretended not to see anything. To them, obtaining the Tears of Frigid Fire was the most important thing. They were not in the mood to argue with Gao Hanchuan's group. Xiao Nan returned to Gao Hanchuan's group after speaking with LV Dong for a while. Seeing this, Lu Jiangang could not help but ask, Brother Xiao, how is LV Dong? Xiao Nan shook his head, he's still angry. No matter what I say, he won't listen. We can only think of a way to make up for it in the future. Xiao Nan was also very helpless about this. If he had known this would happen, he would not have called LV Dong. He did not expect to cause so much trouble. If he wanted to mend this relationship, he would have to pay a hefty price. Brother Xiao, we've implicated you this time. We're really sorry. Gao Hanchuan's face was filled with guilt. Speaking of which, this matter was completely between them and Bailey Hongzhuang. He was really apologetic for dragging Xiao Nan and LV Dong into this. Xiao Nan, who was originally very unhappy, looked much better after seeing Gao Hanchuan's sincere apology. Forget it. Since it's already like this, I know you guys don't want it to be like this. Although Xiao Nan's heart ached for his loss, since it was already like this, if he became unhappy with Gao Hanchuan's group because of this matter, his loss would be even greater. Although Gao Hanchun and Xiao Nan's voices were very soft, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 still heard it. They could not help but be even more certain of Di Beichen's judgment. When they first met Gao Hanchun was not an ordinary arrogant person. Why would he apologize to someone like this? At this moment, a woman with a smile on her face said to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, "Young master, please show us your invitation letter." Hearing this, Di Beichen and Xiren immediately took out their invitations. After checking Di Beichen and Xiren's invitation letters, the woman nodded and said to the woman who was taking notes, "Number 52 and number 53. However, when Gao Hanchun heard the number of invitations mentioned by the woman, his pupils widened in an instant, and his face was filled with shock. His eyes were locked on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. At this moment, his eyes turned red due to congested blood. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with a gaze that seemed to be filled with deep hatred. Lu Jiangang and the others noticed the change in Gao Hanchuan's expression, and their expressions could not help but change. A hint of panic appeared on their faces. "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" However, Gao Hanchun did not seem to hear Lu Jiangang's words at all. His hands were tightly clenched into fists and the veins on his temples bulged. He looked like an enraged lion and was extremely terrifying. "Number 52 and number 53. That's the invitation letter I sent to my younger brother." After hearing the number on the invitation, Gao Hanchun connected all the dots in an instant. Chapter 32-36. Now, he finally understood that the murderers of his 2 younger brothers were the 4 people in front of him. Why did these 4 people treat the Jintian faction like this? The root cause was here. The murderers that he had always wanted to find were actually right in front of him. As Gao Hanchuan's voice fell, Lu Jiangang, Gui Jun, and Xiao Nan could not help but be stunned. After they reacted, they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and the look in their eyes suddenly changed. They are the murderers. Gui Jun's face was filled with disbelief. Although he had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was very likely to be Yi Lifei's advisor behind the scenes, he had never thought that they would be the murderers of Gao Hanchuan's younger brothers. If this was really the case, didn't it mean that they had already found the murderers on Emerald Island, but because they did not recognize them, they could only watch the murderers slip away in front of their eyes? Lu Jiangang's expression was also extremely complicated. Their Jintian faction had developed from such a prosperous situation to such a destitute state. He had never thought that the culprit would be the murderers of Gao Hanchuan's 2 younger brothers. Then these guys had simply ruined everything for them. Although Xiao Nan was not clear about the process, he had only heard about it from Gao Hanchun and the other 2. However, he did not expect that the murderers would appear in front of them so easily. Gao Hanchun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. He had already determined this result in his heart because he had given these 2 invitation letters to his 2 younger brothers. His 2 younger brothers had been killed before they arrived at Penglai Island, and the things on them must have been taken away by the murderers. Now that these 2 invitation letters had appeared here, the reason was self-evident. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 obviously did not expect that Gao Hanchun would recognize the number on the invitation letter and directly determine their identity through the number. They could not help but curse in their hearts. This Gao Hanchun is too shrewd. He even remembers the number on the invitation letter clearly. I'm afraid it's impossible for us to continue hiding. Sheng Guanying's face was a little ugly. They had been hiding this very well. She didn't expect that their identity would be exposed because of an invitation. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were also surprised. They had never noticed that the invitation letter had a serial number. They didn't expect that this would become their biggest flaw. In this way, no matter how they tried to defend themselves, it was useless. Gao Hanchun had already determined that they were the murderers. "You four damned bastards, how dare you kill my brother?" Gao Hanchun strode forward and grabbed Di Beichen's collar with one hand. He had never hated anyone so much. It was because of these guys in front of him that he had fallen from his high spirits to his current state. His brother had died in the hands of these four guys. Di Beichen directly slapped Gao Hanchuan's hand away. His handsome face was cold. "If they didn't have evil intentions towards us, why would we send them on their way? Speaking of which, gang leader Gao's two brothers really have the same temperament as you. They are both so arrogant that it's annoying." Chapter 32-37. Seeing that Di Beichen had admitted it himself, Gao Hanchun was even more furious. For such a long time, he had been in extreme pain because he had not been able to find Gao Hanqiu and Gao Hanxia's murderers. His younger brother had been killed and he had seen the faces of those who had killed his younger brother with his own eyes. However, after such a long time, he still had not been able to find the murderers and avenge his younger brother. He had thought that with the power of the Jintian Association, it would be a simple matter to find the four cultivators who had just arrived on Penglai Island. However, the final result was a vicious slap to his face. However, he had never thought that the murderers had already appeared in front of him and he had missed them just like that. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun also glared at Di Beichen's group of four. At this moment, they finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four would help Yi Lifei to treat them like this even though they had no enmity with each other. It turned out that they had already formed a grudge against them long ago. However, at the same time, they also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four were extremely terrifying. They were just cultivators who had just arrived on Penglai Island. According to common sense, they should have no power to resist at all and could only be captured without putting up a fight. However, not only had they slipped away before their eyes, they had even completely destroyed the Jintian Association. This kind of ability was really shocking. A complicated light flashed in Xiao Nan's eyes. He had heard about Gao Hanchuan's younger brother's murder earlier, but after the news had spread, he had only thought that it was a pretense used by Gao Hanchun to expand his power. Now, it seemed that it was real and not just a pretense. "You killed my younger brother. I said that I would definitely take your lives." Gao Hanchun narrowed his eyes and a strong murderous intent shot out from his eyes. He wanted nothing more than to tear Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four into 1,000 pieces. Facing Gao Hanchuan's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four remained calm. Now that things had come to this, they were no longer the same as when they had first arrived at Penglai Island. Even if Gao Hanchun and the others were stronger than them, they could not only run away. They had been unwilling to reveal their identities because they felt that their current strength was not enough to completely defeat Gao Hanchun and the others. If they were strong enough, then there was no need for Gao Hanchun to come find them. They would have already taken Gao Hanchuan's life. At this moment, Gao Hanchun didn't want to say anything. His enemies were right in front of him. He just wanted to chop off their heads right now. Vigorous elemental energy exploded from within Gao Hanchuan's body. Without any hesitation, it directly attacked Di Beichen in front of him. He wanted to kill these guys to avenge his brothers. The sudden presence of essence energy instantly attracted the attention of all the cultivators present. Everyone's gaze locked onto Gao Hanchun. Everyone was speechless when they saw that it was Gao Hanchun who took the initiative to attack again. Why does this guy keep going on and on? I think he was the one who pinned the crime on young Master D. This guy must have failed to use the 100 Flowers Gates cultivators to deal with young Master D. Now, he can't help but look for trouble himself. Chapter 32-38. All the cultivators present were filled with disgust and impatience towards Gao Hanchun. They felt that this fellow had purposely picked a place where so many people were gathered to cause trouble again and again. He was simply trying to please the crowd with claptrap. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had been smeared with dirty water before Master Mo proved that she was indeed a powerful person. On the contrary, everyone had a better impression of her. Those who were truly powerful were so low-key. Instead, it was a bunch of clowns who kept looking for trouble. It was truly a little speechless. Isn't this person the sect leader of the Heaven Shaking Association, Gao Hanchun? After Gao Hanchun had attracted the attention of the crowd time and time again, many people recognized his identity. I heard that the Heaven Shaking Association can no longer survive and is on the verge of disbanding. Instead of thinking about how to maintain the Heaven Shaking Association, he keeps looking for trouble here. What is he trying to do? The Heaven Shaking Association can no longer be maintained. Most of the members have already left. What's left is just an empty shell. I heard that Gao Hanchun has already found a way out. Look, aren't those beside him the disciples of the Crimson Moon sect? I think they want to join the Crimson Moon sect. There were many smart people present. Although Penglai Island was very big, the incident caused by the Heaven Shaking Association had attracted too much attention. Therefore, everyone knew quite a bit about it. When the Heaven Shaking Association was developing very well, they were extremely arrogant. Now that they were gradually declining, naturally, many people were waiting to see them make a fool of themselves. When Xiao Nan saw that the crowd had dragged him into the discussion about Gao Hanchun, his face instantly turned a little ugly. He had indeed intended to recommend Gao Hanchun and the others to the Crimson Moon sect because Gao Hanchun and the other two had promised him many benefits. Although Gao Hanchun and the other two's reputation was not very good, he believed that it would not be a problem for them to become ordinary disciples of the Crimson Moon sect. However, now that the crowd had revealed his relationship with Gao Hanchun and the other two, he felt that he had lost face. After all, it was Gao Hanchun's and the others' business to be ridiculed for reaching this point. It was not appropriate for him to be implicated. When Gao Hanchun made his move, a cold glint flashed across Di Beichen's eyes. Their original intention was to participate in this auction to obtain the Tears of Frigid Heat. They never imagined that Gao Hanchun would repeatedly disrupt their plans. One could imagine the unhappiness in their hearts. However, just as Gao Hanchun was about to make a move, a man blocked Gao Hanchun's hand. Gao Hanchun's expression immediately turned ugly when the opponent easily dispelled his attack that was supposed to be a sure-win move. However, when Gao Hanchun saw the person's real appearance, he could not help but be shocked. This was because the cultivator in front of him was none other than the person in charge of the Golden Flame Auction House, Manager Jean. Syndicate Leader Gao, I don't care what kind of deep grudge you have with the other party. However, if you dare to make a move in my Golden Flame Auction House, I have no choice but to interfere. Manager Jin's round face was filled with a faint smile. However, his words were filled with warning. It's not the first time you've come to our auction house. You can't have forgotten our auction house's rules completely, right? Chapter 32-39. Fights were not allowed in the Golden Flame Auction House. This was a rule that everyone was well aware of. It was said that there was once a person who thought highly of himself and ignored this rule of the Golden Flame Auction House. In the end, a cultivator from the Golden Flame Auction House broke his leg and threw him out. The person kept clamoring for revenge, but there was no news of him in the end. Ever since that incident, no one dared to challenge the rules of the Golden Flame auction house because they could not bear the consequences. Gao Hanchun knew very well that his identity could not be compared to the cultivator from the Golden Flame auction house who had provoked him back then. Given the methods of the Golden Flame auction house, it was undoubtedly easy for them to take his life. Previously, he was just in a fit of anger and had forgotten where he was. It was extremely embarrassing. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's faces turned ugly in an instant. They knew very well that nothing good would come out of offending the Golden Flame auction house. Xiao Nan had already taken a few steps back the moment Steward Jin appeared. Obviously, he did not want to have anything to do with Gao Hanchun and the other two. Because of these three guys, he first offended LV Dong and Master Mo, and then he was mocked by everyone. He realized that these three guys were simply trouble wherever they went. If he offended Steward Jin of the Golden Flame auction house because of this, it would not be worth it. At this moment, Xiao Nan had secretly made up his mind. He no longer expected any benefits from Gao Hanchun and the other two. No matter how many benefits there were, they could not be more troublesome than the three of them. At the same time, the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three also fell on Manager Jin's body. His round and fat body, his round face, it was as if he was very oily on a daily basis. However, it would be the biggest mistake to ignore Steward Jin because of this. Steward Jin had easily taken Gao Hanchun's attack just now, which already proved his strength. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Previously, Gao Hanchun could not see the situation clearly and only wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. However, after Steward Jin appeared, he no longer had such thoughts. Steward Jin, I was too impulsive just now. I didn't mean to break the rules of the auction house, Gao Hanchun hurriedly apologized. Seeing Gao Hanchun immediately change his attitude, the smile in Steward Jin's eyes deepened. He said, our Golden Flame auction house has always been a business. It's undoubtedly great that Master Gao can think things through. As he said that, Steward Jin could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Hearing Steward Jin's answer, Gao Hanchun and the others could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, when they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the resentment in their eyes became even more intense. They really did not expect these guys to be so lucky. Every time, they would be able to avoid it so coincidentally. Instead, it was them who got into trouble. Chapter 3240. Originally, whether it was LV Dong looking for trouble or Gao Hanchun discovering that they were the murderers of Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxia, it should have been a big problem. Just by standing in the Golden Flame auction house, they didn't even need to do anything. Someone had already come to help them solve this problem. From beginning to end, they just stood there without moving. Instead, it was LV Dong and Gao Hanchun who were completely disgraced. Di Beichen quietly sized up Steward Jin. Just now, he didn't ignore Steward Jin's gaze when he looked at them. Earlier, he already felt that it was impossible for Steward Jin to not come looking for them. After noticing Steward Jin's meaningful gaze, he understood that Steward Jin had probably noticed them long ago. It was just that he hadn't come looking for them. At this moment, a figure appeared beside Steward Jin. After seeing Di Beichen, a look of surprise appeared on the other party's face. He couldn't help but say, little brother, I didn't expect us to meet again. What a coincidence. Hearing this, Di Beichen turned his head and immediately recognized that this was Di Yujue, whom he had invited to drink a few days ago. Immediately, a joyful smile appeared on Di Beichen's face. Yes, what a coincidence. The moment Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun saw Di Yujue, their faces became abnormally pale. They still couldn't forget that death-like gaze. At this moment, when they saw Di Yujue, it was as if they had fallen into an endless abyss. This person was like a death god in their hearts. If possible, they only hoped that they would never see him again in their lives. They didn't expect to meet him again in just a few days. Most importantly, this person seemed to be very familiar with Di Beichen. Gao Hanchun originally didn't know about Di Yujue's situation, but after Xiao Nan left that day, Lu Jiangang and the other two had already told him about the specific situation, and he was also very afraid in his heart. However, he couldn't understand. Whether it was Mo Xingyu or this extremely terrifying Di Yujue in front of him, they were not simple people. How did they become friends with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who had just arrived at Penglai Island for less than half a year? Birds of a feather flock together. This is a rule that applies everywhere. Logically speaking, if he didn't have enough ability, he wouldn't be able to get such a cultivator to befriend him. However, the scene before him really made him feel a little stunned. When Manager Jean saw that Di Yujue actually knew Di Beichen, his fat face couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. "Young master, you know them?" Di Yujue smiled faintly and nodded. "They are my friends." As soon as these words came out, Manager Jin's face suddenly revealed a deep shock. With Di Yujue's noble status, he rarely had the chance to see Di Yujue. Furthermore, he had never heard Di Yujue say that anyone was his friend. Di Beichen and the others had just arrived at Penglai Island. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have had the chance to meet Di Yujue. How did they become friends with Di Yujue in the blink of an eye? However, Gao Hanchun and the others were completely dumbfounded when they heard how Manager Jin addressed Di Yujue. With Manager Jin's status, he actually addressed Di Yujue as young master. Doesn't this mean that Di Yujue's status in the Golden Flame auction house is higher? Chapter 32-41. Xiao Nan immediately recognized Di Yujue. He really did not expect that the cultivator they casually drove away that day would have such a strong background. As long as Di Yujue opened his mouth, their lives would be in danger. Thinking of this, more and more cold sweat appeared on Xiao Nan's forehead. Fortunately, Di Yujue did not get angry that day. Otherwise, he would really be done for. Now, he only hoped that Di Yujue did not notice his existence at that time. After all, he was not the one who drove Di Yujue away. At this moment, Xiao Nan no longer hesitated. He turned around and walked directly to the back of the group. He was no longer willing to have anything to do with Gao Hanchun and the other two. Wasn't this causing trouble for himself? "Manager Jean, since my friends are here, you can bring them to the box," Di Yujue said lightly. Hearing this, Manager Jean nodded repeatedly, yes. Di Yujue then turned to look at Di Beichen and the others, saying, "The environment in the box is much more comfortable than the ordinary seats. The bidding service there will also be better. I still have some things to do, so I can't accompany you. Let's meet again next time, okay?" Di Beichen nodded, "Thank you. Since you're here at the Golden Flame auction house, as the host, it's natural for me to take good care of my friends," Di Yujue said with a faint smile on his face, and his eyes were filled with admiration for Di Beichen. When he first met Di Beichen did not know his identity at all. Just now, when he revealed his identity, he clearly noticed a flash of surprise in Di Beichen's eyes. However, he only saw admiration and understanding in Di Beichen's eyes, and did not see any flattery. This already made him have a good impression of him. "Manager Jean, take good care of them. I'll take my leave first." "Yes." After Di Yujue left, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three changed. If it was said that Mo Xingyu's previous words had already raised everyone's opinion of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, then Di Yujue's appearance had already caused everyone to categorize the four of them as people that should not be provoked. As long as it was a cultivator who had some relationship with the Golden Flame auction house, no one would be willing to offend them. Not to mention that the person Bailey Hongzhuang and the others knew was very likely to be the young master of the Golden Flame auction house. Immediately, everyone looked at the ashen-faced Gao Hanchun and the others with eyes full of mockery. Previously, he had already felt that these fellows were playing to the gallery. Now, they were slapping him in the face one after another. This was no longer a slap in the face, but a death wish. Under Manager Jin's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three directly arrived at the private room of the Golden Flame auction house. As everyone knew, those who were able to participate in the auction in the private rooms were usually wealthy and respectable people. The private rooms of the Golden Flame auction house were a place to show off one's status. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter at all. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three entered the private room, they immediately realized that the Golden Flame auction house's magnificence and decorations were not something that ordinary people could compare to. The entire private room was mainly black, inlaid with a faint gold color. It was low-key yet gorgeous, respectable yet not ostentatious. The four sides of the room were filled with high-quality soft cushions, making it exceptionally comfortable to sit in. The most important thing was that they could clearly see the auction items on the stage, which was far better than an ordinary seat. Chapter 32-42. Hearing Steward Jin's words, Di Beichen shook his head and said, "This place is already very good. We are very satisfied." The smile on Steward Jin's face deepened. "You are all friends of our young master. Young master has specially instructed me to treat you well. No matter what you need, you can directly ask me. If I am not here, you can also ask the waiter. We will definitely arrange it properly. Steward Jin is too polite. Everything is fine with us. There is no need to make any more arrangements." Di Beichen said with a faint smile. Steward Jin nodded and waved his hand. The waiter outside the door had already brought in all kinds of snacks and drinks. "Then please rest here for a while. The auction will start soon. I still have some things to tell you. If you need anything, just inform the waiter outside the door. She will contact me. Steward Jin, just do your thing. Everything is fine here." After Steward Jin left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three people looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. The service of the Golden Flame auction house is really thoughtful. The auction houses we went to before can't be compared with this one. Shangguan Yingying sighed. This service and this attitude really made them feel like VIPs. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "We are sitting in this box and can see the situation on the auction stage very clearly. It should have been processed by special means. It feels as if the stand is right in front of us. I heard that ordinary people can't enter the box of the Golden Flame auction house. Usually, only the higher-ups of the other three forces can enter the box. I didn't expect that we would also receive such treatment. I'm afraid no one would believe me if I told them." Xiren chuckled. "Di Beichen, your ability is also amazing. A person you met casually has such a great background. Logically speaking, a person of such status shouldn't have made friends with someone he met by chance. It seems like you two are not just fated to meet." Di Beichen looked calm. "I just felt a very special feeling when I saw him. Even today, I still feel the same. I don't care about his identity. Compared to that, he hoped that he could find the source of this special feeling. Beichen, Di Yujua's status in the Golden Flame auction house is not simple. If we can't get the Tears of Frigid Flame back, will there be a glimmer of hope for us to ask him?" Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen with her pitch-black phoenix eyes twinkling. Previously, they had been thinking about how to negotiate with the higher-ups of the Golden Flame auction house. Steward Qin had made it clear that Steward Jin seemed unable to make a decision on this matter. But Di Yujue's status was higher than Steward Jin's, so maybe there was hope. This way, maybe Beichen's problem. And Jin. This way, maybe Beichen's. Let's take a look at the situation of this auction first. Di Beichen said slowly. He always felt that his friendship with Di Yujue was very pure. If possible, he didn't want to destroy it because of other things. Chapter 32-43. As Gao Hanchun and the other two entered the ordinary seats of the auction, they realized that Xiao Nan, who had been following behind them, was nowhere to be found. Previously, all of their attention had been focused on Di Yujue and Di Beichen. They had not noticed the situation behind them at all. Why has Big Brother Xiao disappeared? Could it be that we got separated when we entered? Lu Jiangang furrowed his brows as a puzzled look appeared on his face. However, Gao Hanchun and Gue Jun's expressions have turned extremely ugly. They were not as simple as Lu Jiangang had thought. They knew very well that Xiao Nan had probably decided to draw a clear line between them after what had just happened. Hence, he had immediately separated from them. Big Brother, Xiao Nan has left just like that. Doesn't that mean that our plan to join the Crimson Moon sect? Gue Jun stared at Gao Hanchun with an ugly look on his face. This was truly a case of one trouble after another. It had not been easy for them to obtain confirmation from Xiao Nan. As long as they could join the Crimson Moon sect, their current predicament would at least be resolved. However, with this commotion, would they not be back to where they started? Even the possibility of joining the Crimson Moon sect was gone. Gao Hanchun clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, he could no longer care about any of this. He only wanted to tear Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three into 1,000 pieces. Only then would he be able to quell the rage in his heart. If it had not been for these fellows, he would not have ended up in this state. Gue Jun, Jiangang, I've dragged you down this time. Gao Hanchun sighed as his face filled with guilt. If it had not been for me, you would not have ended up in this state. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun could not help but shake their heads when they heard Gao Hanchun's words. They said, Big Brother, when we first became sworn brothers, we had already sworn that we would share blessings and hardships. Your matters are our matters. How can you say that you've dragged us down? It's fine if we can't join the Crimson Moon sect. The entire Penglai Island is so big. I don't believe that there won't be a place for the three of us. Gao Hanchun patted Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's shoulders as his face filled with gratitude. Good brothers. Big Brother, in my opinion, those four people aren't simple. If we want to take revenge, I'm afraid we'll have to think about it carefully. Gue Jun glanced at Gao Hanchun. He could not be more clear about the latter's thoughts. However, based on the current situation, it would not be easy to take revenge immediately. Gao Hanchun nodded. I understand what you mean. I've already calmed down. No matter what, I must take revenge. But we can discuss this plan first. It's good that you understand. Gue Jun heaved a sigh of relief. What he was most afraid of was that Gao Hanchun would be hot-headed and directly rush up to attack. Who knew if the other party had some tricks up his sleeve? If that were to happen, they would be doomed. Gao Hanchun must be thinking about how to deal with us now. In my opinion, we have to be careful after this auction. Xiren's face darkened slightly, and a serious look flashed in his eyes. Di Beichen nodded. But I'm afraid that what happened just now has given them some scruples. I'm afraid they won't dare to act rashly for the time being. We have to find a way to solve this problem. Chapter 32-44. Bailey Hongzhuang said in a low voice. Because her cultivation was not as good as Gao Hanchun and the others, she could only make a rough judgment based on the aura, but she believed that the gap should not be too big. With their current strength, it was indeed not an easy task to deal with someone with such a cultivation base. Even if they had broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they could still fight against cultivators at the 6th level of the Purple Realm and even the 7th level of the Purple Realm. However, if they were to face Gao Hanchun, who was at the 8th level of the Purple Realm, it would not be so simple. After all, at this level of cultivation, every increase in strength would bring an extremely shocking increase in combat strength. If we were to fight them head-on, we would be at a disadvantage. However, judging from the current situation of the Xintian Association, I'm afraid that the 3 of them will not be able to find any other helpers. It is not impossible for us to fight them together. Di Beichen said slowly in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with thoughts. That's right. Even if we were to fight them head-on, we still have a chance. In that case, we might as well put this matter to the back of our minds for the time being. After the auction is over, we will think about how to deal with them. Xiren looked carefree. What he was most concerned about now was Di Beichen's change in physique. Gao Hanchun and the others were no longer the same as before, so there was no need to be as wary as before. Soon, the auction of the Golden Flame auction house began under the expectant gaze of the crowd. A graceful woman walked up to the ring. Her outstanding face and enchanting figure attracted the attention of the crowd in an instant. However, there was no coquettishness on this woman's face. On the contrary, it was filled with nobility and confidence. I am the auctioneer of today's auction, Enya. Enya bowed deeply to the crowd, and the cleavage in front of her chest caused the crowd to exclaim in surprise. It had to be said that in this kind of slightly tense and depressing auction, such a woman was indeed pleasing to the eyes. Today's auction is carefully prepared by our Golden Flame auction house. There are countless precious treasures. The auction catalogue has already appeared in everyone's hands. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to it. Enya's red lips were slightly raised. Her bright eyes looked at the black mass below the stage, but her face was calm and composed. Next, I will start the auction with the first item. In order to avoid vicious competition, each bid must not be less than 100 spirit stones. At the same time, I need to remind everyone of the rules of our auction house. I don't wish for any trouble to occur during the auction. Otherwise, you will become an unwelcome guest of our auction house. There was a faint smile on Enya's face. It was obviously a warning, but when it came out of her mouth, it was not so stiff and hard to accept. That's not all. I hope that everyone can take note of their own wealth when bidding. If you bid for a treasure that you can't afford because of a momentary competition, I'm afraid the consequences will be extremely troublesome. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard Enya's words, they couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. A big auction house is indeed a big auction house. The introduction at the beginning was not to arouse the crowd's enthusiasm, but to give everyone alarm after alarm. Chapter 32:45. I'm afraid that only an auction house like the Golden Flame auction house can do such a thing. If it was an ordinary auction house, just a few simple words would have destroyed everyone's interest and good impression. Sheng Guaniying pouted. This scene was really unexpected. When Xiren smiled faintly, I think that this method is quite good. This way, the possibility of conflict can be minimized. The Golden Flame auction house holds an auction every day. If there is always vicious competition or people who owe money, wouldn't it be troublesome? It seems that it's not easy to cause trouble in this auction house. Xiao He frowned. In that case, if we can't get the Tears of Glacial Flame, it won't be that easy to steal it back. As soon as she said that, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 changed slightly. This was the first time they had come to the Golden Flame auction house. However, judging from everything that had happened before, the rules of the Golden Flame auction house were extremely strict. It was almost impossible for them to do anything sneaky here. Now, our biggest hope is that Steward Qin can get the Tears of Glacial Flame. After all, his wealth is much more than ours. Wen Xiren sighed. Just as everyone was talking, the first auction item was brought up. There was almost no need for Enya to introduce it. The enthusiasm of the bidders below the stage had completely exploded. In fact, all the items in this auction were very attractive to cultivators. As long as they were brought out, it was enough to attract everyone's fiery gazes. Therefore, after Enya mentioned a base price, the sound of bidding continued to ring out. Every time a sign was raised, Enya would call out a new price. Looking at such a lively scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were also amazed. This degree of enthusiasm was more explosive than they had imagined. There are really many rich people in Penglai Island. Just this first auction item will probably be sold for an incredible price. Sheng Guaniying stared at the black mass of ordinary cultivators below the stage and sighed in her heart. These people were really capable. Compared to the predicament they were in when they came to Penglai Island, if it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's medicine to help them get out of the predicament, they would probably only be able to watch helplessly even if they came to participate in the auction now. Comparisons were odious. This point was not wrong at all. The items at the beginning of the auction are just appetizers. The competition will become more intense as the auction progresses. At that time, we will be able to see the true strength of these cultivators. Wen Xiren shook his head. They are really evil rich people. Most of the people who bought these things are ordinary cultivators, and the people who will be bidding later on are probably the various powers. These people also know that if they want to bid for the treasures at the back, there is basically no hope. They can only put all their hopes on the items at the front of the auction. As long as it helps their own cultivation, it is not a loss. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Chapter 32-46. There's no rush. Di Beichen's expression was calm. Hongzhuang said that the Tears of Frosty Flame are useless to ordinary people. I presume that even if someone bids for it, it won't be sold for too high a price. After all, other treasures are much more attractive than the Tears of Frosty Flame in their eyes. Everyone nodded. They could only look forward to it now. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the auction catalogue. The map fragment that she was interested in was very close to the front. It wouldn't be long before it would be auctioned. She was determined to get this map fragment. Hongzhuang, what are you looking at? Sheng Guaniying couldn't help but ask when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking at the auction catalogue. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and pointed at the map fragment on the auction catalogue. We have to think of a way to get this map fragment. As soon as these words were spoken, a wisp of curiosity appeared on the faces of Sheng Guaniying and Wen Xiren. Incomplete map. It's only a quarter of the map fragment. What do we need it for? Beichen and I got this map fragment a few years ago. Including this map fragment that's being auctioned now, we have 3. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Sheng Guaniying's eyes lit up. Really? Are you sure that the map fragment you got before is the same as this one? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Of course. This map fragment is very special. It's impossible to copy it. As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took out the 2 pieces of the map and said, "Take a look." Sheng Guaniying and Xiren each took a map fragment and compared it with the map fragment in the catalogue. Their eyes lit up. It's really the same map fragment. What a coincidence. It's such a small chance for you to find it. We also think that it's a coincidence. Maybe it's fate. Di Baichen's lips curved slightly. Since we found it, we naturally have to get it. Xiren looked at the map fragment in his eyes. However, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't understand where it was drawn. He couldn't help but ask, "Do you know where this map fragment points to? Could it be a treasure?" "I don't know." Di Baichen shook his head helplessly. "I'm afraid we can't tell before the 4 map fragments are gathered. However, the method used to draw this map fragment is very special. Everything is done in such a secretive manner that it shouldn't be something ordinary. In my opinion, this might be a treasure map." Xiren's eyes lit up with interest. "I didn't think that there would be such an interesting thing. If it really is a treasure map, then we've struck it rich." Looking at Xiren's excited expression, Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh and shake their heads. Even if they had seen the 3rd map fragment, they couldn't be sure where the 4th map fragment was. It was very likely that they would never find it in their lifetime. Keep dreaming. Sheng Guaniying glanced at Xiren. The map fragments are scattered all over the Xingxian continent. Who knows where the last one is? Chapter 3247. The next item to be auctioned is today's 10th auction item, the incomplete map. On the auction stage, a tray was placed in front of Inya, and a piece of the incomplete map was placed on the tray. This incomplete map was accidentally obtained by our auction house. Because its production method is extremely special, we concluded that the things drawn on this incomplete map are probably not simple. However, because this incomplete map is only a quarter of the complete map, we decided to sell it. If you bid for it, once you gather all 4 pieces of the incomplete map, you may get a great opportunity. Now, the bidding begins, and the starting price is 10,000 spirit stones. As Inya's voice fell, the atmosphere in the room froze for a moment. For the other treasures, everyone was very interested in buying them, but for this incomplete map, no one was so enthusiastic about it. Since the Golden Flame auction house had appraised it as an extraordinary map fragment, its value was definitely not low. However, it was only a quarter of the incomplete map fragment. Everyone knew how difficult it was to find the other 3 quarters. Even if one bought this incomplete map fragment, they would only be able to look at it. There was no point in it at all. Unless one was extremely lucky and was confident that they could gather all 4 incomplete maps. Therefore, there was a moment of silence. Inya's face was always filled with a faint smile. Even if there was an awkward silence, she did not show the slightest bit of nervousness. She just looked at the people below the stage indifferently. It was very rare for the items sold by the Golden Flame auction house to go unsold, and for an auction of this level, the possibility of it going unsold was even smaller. Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry to bid. So far, she had not seen anyone in the private room bid. Even if they wanted to bid, it was best to wait until everyone raised the price to a similar level. This way, they could avoid many problems. Although they didn't have the qualifications to sit in this private room, since they were already here, they should show their identity. This awkward silence did not last long, and soon, cultivators began to bid. 15,000 spirit stones, 11,000 spirit stones. Because it was too difficult to gather all the pieces of the incomplete map, everyone did not bid high. After all, if they couldn't gather all the pieces, it was no different from a piece of scrap paper. It was okay if they spent a small price to buy it back as a memento, but if they spent a high price just for such a hope, there was really something wrong with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were relieved after hearing the increase in price. Since no one was determined to get the incomplete map, they should be able to get it at a lower price, 15,000 spirit stones. At this time, a familiar voice came into the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, causing their gazes to change a little. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other, and a hint of surprise appeared in their eyes. Gao Hanchun is actually bidding for this incomplete map. That voice sounds like him. Shang Guanying nodded her head. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. I didn't expect Gao Hanchun to be interested in this map. Chapter 32-48. Gao Hanchun doesn't look like someone who would be interested in the map fragment. Wen Xiren sighed. He really didn't want to have anything to do with Gao Hanchun anymore. He didn't expect that they would be involved in the end. It really made him feel helpless. Di Beichen glanced at the ordinary seats below indifferently. I'm afraid some things are destined. Don't worry about them. Let's just take care of ourselves. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also felt that this was an ill-fated relationship. Encountering Gao Hanchun and the others would be a disaster for both them and Gao Hanchun. If Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu hadn't harbored ill intentions towards them, they wouldn't have taken their lives. Similarly, if Gao Hanchun hadn't threatened to take their lives and hunted them down on Emerald Island, they wouldn't have let the Jintian faction fall to its current state. In the end, Gao Hanchun was the unluckiest one. They didn't suffer much loss, but they were in a lot of trouble. 20,000 spirit stones. Gao Hanchun called out again. He was determined to get this map fragment. Long ago, he had coincidentally obtained an incomplete map. Although he did not understand what was drawn on it, he could feel the uniqueness of this map. He always felt that it was absolutely not simple. All these years, he had been collecting this map fragment, hoping that he would have the chance to see the other 3 map fragments in the future. However, he hadn't received any news. He didn't expect to see this map fragment in the Golden Flame Auction House's catalog. He immediately felt that this was fate and that this map fragment would definitely fall into his hands. He believed that he could really collect all these map fragments in his lifetime. Perhaps the secret behind this map fragment would be enough for him to live comfortably. As Gao Hanchuan's bid was heard, the auction house couldn't help but fall silent. When the price of this map fragment reached such a high level, no one had any intention of continuing to bid. Seeing this, Gao Hanchun couldn't help but smile. It seemed that this map fragment was going to fall into his hands. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly came from the private room. 30,000 spirit stones. As this voice fell, a hint of surprise appeared in the eyes of many cultivators present. They were very clear about the rules of the Golden Flame Auction House. It was not a place that could be entered with money alone. One must have sufficient power and background on Penglai Island. Therefore, every cultivator who could enter the Golden Flame Auction House was someone that everyone wanted to befriend. However, usually, the people in this box would only start bidding at the end of the auction. He didn't expect them to be interested in this map fragment. For a time, everyone's interest in the map fragment couldn't help but increase slightly. However, when they thought about the identity and status of the other party, it was utterly meaningless for them to participate in the competition. On the contrary, they might even offend the other party. It was truly unwise. Thus, practically everyone had given up on continuing the competition. However, when Gao Hanchun heard the voice, his face suddenly became extremely unsightly because he was familiar with the voice. It's these despicable fellows again. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.